everybody! So it is time for the next year in my animated Oscars series, and we are at 2012. I've been a little bit nervous to do this post, I admit it, because I don't necessarily have as much enthusiasm for one of the films as everybody else seems to have, but I always try to be fair and just be honest with how I feel. So the first film, I'm just going to get it out of the way, that we're going to talk about is WreckIt Ralph.
I am bad. And that's good. I will never be good. No. And that's not bad.
Hold that thought.
There's no one I'd rather be than me.
And this is from Walt Disney Animated Studios. This is a film directed by Rich Moore, and it is about a character named Ralph, who is a character in a video game in an old school arcade. And this is a video game where basically he destroys this apartment complex every time they play. And then there's a character named Felix who has this hammer, and he is able to fix everything that Ralph destroys. Well, it turns out that Ralph is really tired of being this bad guy. He even goes to this Bad Anonymous, which was really fun. It was kind of Alcoholic Anonymous, but for bad video games. And I thought that was funny. I think I would have thought it was hilarious if I'd known who any of those characters are, but I don't because I don't know video games. Ends up kind of getting offended and frustrated with the other people in his game. And they tell him that in order for him to not sleep in the dump and to be able to be in the apartment, he has to get a medal. The way they have it set up is they have all of the cords for all the games head into this power strip. And the power strip is kind of like the train station for all the video games in their worlds. That's such a cool design and such a cool concept. But for me, it ends up actually being a little bit of a false advertising. Because you see all of these games. You see it in the arcade, you see it in the train station, and you think, oh great, this is going to be really fun. We're going to get to see all these different worlds and these different characters and stuff. And unfortunately, what they decided to do is to spend the entire movie in two worlds, and almost all of it in one. The first place he goes is to Hero's Duty, and this is kind of a Halo-style game, and there's this great character, Sergeant Tamora, played by Jane Lynch, and so deadpan and funny, and I laughed at almost all of her lines. I really like her character. She ends up at a certain point meeting Felix, and that's really funny and unexpected and surprising. But Ralph ends up leaving Hero's Duty at the 26-minute mark of the film. And so that means there's 75 minutes of this movie that are all dedicated to the other land. And that land is called Sugar Rush. And this is a frustrating part about this movie to me, is that I just don't think Sugar Rush is that compelling. I think that it's very similar to kinds of lands we've seen in everything from Candyland to Wizard of Oz to Strawberry Shortcake to Care-a-Lot and Care Bears. I mean, there's just been a lot of pink, sugary worlds. Even The Simpsons had a similar world. Like, it's just not that creative. And I feel like the story that we get once we get to Sugar Rush is also not as compelling as that first part. Ralph ends up meeting this little girl named Vanellope, and she is a glitch. There's 9 different avatars that can race in this racing game called Sugar Rush. In order to be one of the 9 avatars, you have to participate in this race, and she's never been allowed to because she's a glitch, so she's kind of the outsider. Well, so her and Ralph he's an outsider, so they kind of hit it off. There is this guy, King Candy, who's the ruler over the Sugar Rush land. So it ends up kind of becoming sort of this racing movie and this buddy movie. I feel like it sort of borrows from Monsters, Inc. a lot in this part of the film. You kind of have the big brute kind of guy, the monster type guy with the little girl, the cute little girl. I feel like it really starts to drag there in that Sugar Rush section. And then once the sergeant and Felix end up coming to Sugar Rush and the ending really packs an emotional punch. The problem that I have with WreckIt Ralph is that Sarah Silverman is the voice of Vanellope, and I just find her really grating and annoying. That the villain is surprising and exciting, and I think that reveal is done very, very well. And like I said, the animation is good throughout, so overall it is an entertaining film. It's just not a favorite of mine. The next nominee is called Frankenweenie, and this
dog is alive! Shh, easy boy. I can fix that.
This is a Tim Burton film, and he directed it based on a short that he done, I think in the 80s, and this is stop motion. I had not seen Frankenweenie before this week because I'm just not a Tim Burton fan. I feel like he did a few things that were interesting early with the Batman and Beetlejuice and that, but I'm just so tired of his style, and he just burned so many bridges when you got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and his Dark Shadows and his Alice in Wonderland, and had no interest in seeing Frankenweenie. But I did see it this week, and you know what? I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I thought that it was a really sweet little movie. Yes, it's scary, and it's definitely an homage to the old school Bela Lugosi type of horror movies, the Universal horror movies. I know that Burton loves that. I think his best movie, in my opinion, is still Ed Wood. But I think that this film is one that really works because I just really loved the relationship between Sparky and Victor, the little boy. And Victor is just this lost little boy, and the only real happiness in his life is his dog. He loves his dog Sparky, and fortunately bad thing happens and Sparky gets hit by a car. He decides to bring Sparky back to life. He's Frankenstein's it, and he has this Frankenstein dog, and then the story kind of goes from there. And it really has a consistent tone, and the story is very tight. There's not a lot of time where I was bored, and it actually is pretty scary at times. I thought there's a character that looks a lot like Vincent Price, and so that was really cool and a little bit scary. It's all done in black and white, which was super cool. Has a great cast with Martin Short, Martin Landau, and Winona Ryder. The music by Danny Elfman is great. Overall, yes, it hits a lot of those Tim Burton chords, but as somebody who's very annoyed by those chords, I still enjoyed this film. So there you go. Next film we're going to talk about is from Aardman Animation. It is The Pirates Band of Misfits.
Can we get there?
Well, yes, but unfortunately there's this dirty great sea monster in the way.
I think they just add those onto maps for decoration.
Is that a fact? See? I told you!
I think this is one of Aardman's best films. It's so funny. They pack in jokes into every single line of this movie, and it's definitely very much that dry wit. And I don't know why this movie didn't do better. I don't know what Aardman did to tick people off, because nobody wants to see their movies in the States for some reason. It spoofs a lot of different pirate movies and other films, but it is not a parody film. It's not like the Shrek films. The story of this is there's this pirate captain, voiced by Hugh Grant, who wants to be Pirate of the Year. And so he ends up coming in contact with Charles Darwin in his quest to be Pirate of the Year, and Queen Victoria, who hates pirates so much. And again, the amount of detail that goes into this film is really incredible. I mean, I think it's Aardman's most detailed film. Every single inch of the ships and the ocean, and there's crowd scenes, which must be insanely hard to do with stop motion. It's just a super entertaining, tight. It's not boring. The jokes are funny. The characters, it's not too raunchy. It's not too adult. I think kids will like it. It definitely has sweet moments and a nice little message, even though they're pirates. So you kind of have to, they do steal and loot and stuff like that. The next film that we're going to talk about is ParaNorman.
Is everyone alright? Nobody got bitten? I bit. I hung. Did that count?
This summer, you don't become a hero
Norman!
Norman? This is so Norman.
by being normal.
Don't let it change who you are.
And ParaNorman is from Leica Studios, and they, of course, did Coraline. This is my favorite of the Leica films. It's also stop motion, of course, and it's got such a great heart to it, and it's effectively scary, and it's funny, and I think it's a really unique, interesting story. It's about this boy named Norman who can talk to dead people, and he sees dead people, kind of like Sixth Sense a little bit. And he kind of gotten sort of used to it in a way. Ends up getting a message from one of them and telling him of something that is going to happen. There's kind of a curse on the town. Curse ends up unleashing these zombies kind of into the town. And so him and his sister, and the sister's kind of boyfriend, I guess, and then his best friend, all end up kind of going sort of Goonies style a little bit, trying to figure out the curse and figure out how to stop the curse. And there's just a great, interesting like take on the bully story, the bully narrative, where the person who was bullied is now become the bully, and how like Norman is able to sort of talk to her since he is an abnormal person. And it is scary. Like, I definitely jumped a couple times the first time I saw it. Like, this is a film that's probably more for teenagers than it is for children. But it's also has a great attention to detail. I've never seen stop motion characters that look the way these characters look. Now we're going to talk about Brave.
If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?
Directed by Mark Edwards and Brenda Chapman, and it had a very troubled history at Pixar. They actually had Brenda Chapman was actually released, and Mark was brought in, kind of cobbled together whatever film that they could out of what was left. It was just, I guess, a big mess. I actually don't hate Brave like a lot of other people do, but it is my least favorite Pixar. And you say, what, Cars 2, Cars 2? I think Cars 2 is more successful. It tells the story that it's setting out to tell, and that's a big problem for me with Brave and with WreckIt Ralph. The problem with Brave is that they start the first 15 minutes or so, they are selling it, especially in the trailer, but even in the first 15 minutes, as this epic story, as this legend that they're going to be telling you, where you're going to see myths and battles, and it's going to be like Sleeping Beauty, with an epic kind of villain, and we're going to see sword fighting and archery and all this stuff. Well, unfortunately, after that 15 minutes, it basically becomes a domestic dispute film between a mother and a daughter, and that's good. It's just frustrating because that's not the film that you had signed up for when you start to watch the movie. You get all excited, like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. And then it turns into something else. But I do think it also suffers from a lack of a villain. There really is no villain in this film. It's just basically a mother and a daughter that are trying to work out their relationship. There's a mean bear, but that's about as bad as it gets. I also think that a lot of the humor in Brave really falls flat with the brothers. And I don't know, it just doesn't, to me, it's not that funny. And it's also pretty scary. The bear fight kind of at the end was way too scary for my nieces. There are some really good things about it. I like the character of Merida. I really do. I think that she deserved a better movie. I like her design. I love her hair. Oh my gosh. I think that she has spunk, and I really like that the movie had the guts to have her end without a love interest or things that Brave tried to do. I feel like Frozen ended up doing better. They had a character who doesn't end up with a love interest in the end, who the main drama in the film is between two family members. This case, it's a mother-daughter. Frozen, it's two sisters. No villain really until the very end in Frozen. There's no villain here, but I think they make it work so much better in Frozen than in Brave. So I don't know, I feel like maybe Disney and Pixar kind of learned their lesson. Music is really great, and score by Patrick Doyle is really great, and I think some of the songs features the Mumford & Sons, which is really cool, and Julie Fowlis in Touch the Sky. Overall, I think The Brave is an entertaining but very flawed film. So for me, when I look at which one is the best of these films, so Brave won, and I don't know anybody that thinks The Brave is the one that should have won out of these five. So I don't think The Brave should have won. And I wouldn't have had a problem with WreckIt Ralph winning, but if it was just me and I was picking the one that I like the most, I would pick ParaNorman. I think the story's really creative. I love the animations. I think the characters look different. I think it's got such heart to it. I think it's got good scares. I think it's got good jokes. Overall, I just think it's a really satisfying movie. I think the ParaNorman is the best out of these five, but I think that they're all strong. There's none that I hate. It's not like there's a shark tail in there or something like that I give an F to. So that's kind of my thoughts on 2012, and I'm sure that everyone's going to disagree with me, and that's cool. Like I said, I like WreckIt Ralph. I just don't think it's perfect. So put in the comments section, tell me why I'm wrong, and please subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.